First of all, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
No, thank you for having me.
You're coming onto the program at a time when our own sense of our national security seems to be heightened, particularly in light of the events of Remembrance Day last fall.
Yes.
And now with the introduction of Bill C-51. Mm-hmm. Are we moving in the right direction from your perspective to help to ensure that we are going to be as safe as we possibly can?
Personally, I think right now, no. We need, when I look at attacks that are happening, first thing that always comes to mind is how could we have prevented it? And when attacks happen, I think we also have to look at is what didn't we do to prevent it from happening? So just for the sake that it has happened, it shows that we haven't done enough for the security.
But wouldn't the Prime Minister argue the same thing? And he's saying it's because law enforcement agencies don't have the tools at their disposal that they need to be able to intervene. Mm-hmm. And isn't that what Bill C-51 is trying to address?
Well, I'll be honest with you.
You can laugh.
Well, no, you can't legislate your way out of this problem. You can't legislate terrorism away. You can't legislate crime away. There are tools. Parliamentarians pass laws to assist law enforcement to do their job. But the real issue here is about resources, putting the resources and giving the resources to the right organizations to prevent attacks like this happening. And that's the real issue.
So what kind of resources are you talking about?
Well, the resources in terms of, for example, I've worked in organized crime, and it takes a very large team to tackle, say, one organized crime group or certain files. And then you have to prioritize the work. And so now imagine if you're working on an organized crime file, and all of a sudden a terrorist act happens. There's only a certain amount of resources that you have to be shifted, and obviously it has to go to the priority files. Mm-hmm. So where do we think the resources are going to be drained from? From your best detectives who are good at organized crime. And in the same case for organized crime files, when organized crime files, like for example the gang violence is happening now, resources are going to be drawn from other organizations that are there designed to prevent problems from happening. So it is a matter of resources and giving the tools, the proper tangible tools to the police. As when I was a police officer, I would say, you know what, just give us more resources and we can do more.
Is that another way of saying give us more manpower?
Absolutely.
So what you're talking about in essence then is more people.
Yes.
Like creating more jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And then what exactly will the role be that they have? Is it to sit there and observe electronically and use a wide variety of different surveillance tools at their disposal? Or is it more about getting out in the community and getting to know people? Well,
first of all, I think the police agencies themselves know where to put the people. But in my personal opinion, even with all the high-tech equipment that you might have, it does not replace the human being, the detective, the police officer that's going to do the work. That ability to build a relationship, and there is a unique skill set in policing that we have, is the people that we can build relationships with other people. When we do organized crime, most of the time it's called source development. Being able to go into the organized crime group themselves and actually have somebody share information with you. And that is a very unique skill set to have. And that relationship building is very important.
How do you do that? Because I think, okay, that person doesn't like me just by nature of the fact that I'm not them. Mm-hmm. Even whether I'm a part of a police force or not, they are focused on a particular journey in life, mm-hmm. and I may not be on that same journey, so therefore they're not going to like me and they're not going to trust me. How, in those circumstances, do you get them to start to open up to you?
You know, that's actually where the skill comes in, and you'd be very surprised. My time in gang squad and organized crime, we actually have very good relationships with the people that we're trying to arrest, and that surprises a lot of folks. I can go up to people and have a chat with them about certain things, and a lot of times we used to. And I'll give you one example. I used to go to and I'll even actually define it within the current problem that we're facing, especially in Surrey. And I went up to one gangster, high up there in the organized crime, and I won't use his name, and I just went up to him and said, listen, what's up with the younger guys? Like, get a control of them. Because normally what we do is, instead of trying to just tackle the younger ones that are causing the problems, go to the ones that are already at the leadership level. And so I used to go up to, they're causing a ruckus. Can you get a control of them? And he goes, you know what, Harj, I don't know what to do. He goes, these kids are out of control. He goes, they want to impress us, and we're trying to tell them to stay away from us because as time goes on, it gets a little bit more and more violent. So that relationship is actually...
you can have that kind of conversation with somebody who's a gang leader?
Not only gang leaders, I did this in Afghanistan. And we know when you wear a uniform, we're this side of the law. But it's very important to maintain that communication with somebody. And they know very straight out, if we have the evidence to arrest them, we will. It's not like I'm their friend or anything, and they know that too. But one thing is that we have mutual respect for one another. I'm not going to go there and constantly just harass somebody, especially their family, or keep pulling them over for doing various things. I'm going to look for evidence to arrest them. But at the same time, they also respect you. And it's a really bizarre world that we kind of that we work in, and having that relationship, and it's being able to build that relationship in that way, knowing that you're adversaries, is that unique skill set that I'm actually talking about, and that takes years to build, and not everybody can do it.
Okay, gangs are one thing, but when you start to talk about somebody who is ideologically motivated, and they are looking at carrying out some kind of a terrorist attack, how on earth do you infiltrate that kind of environment or those sorts of cells?
Well, one, I can't actually get into the details how it's done for obvious reasons.
Right.
But having said that, the same skill set, the reason I'm giving you the organized crime example is the same type of work is actually done when you're dealing with terrorist organizations. But I'll give you an unclassified example. Maintaining relationships with communities. A lot of the times when we're working as police officers, it's a police that will generate the information that something doesn't fit in, and that's the information that you need to be able to share with the other agencies. And those subtleties are those things that we're looking for. Say you build a relationship with a certain community, they're the one that can see the difference between somebody is acting differently, or somebody new has come in that's saying something that's odd. And those subtleties are the things that you need. But building relationships with the key individuals is very important. And again, that's where the skills comes in. Who do you build relationships with? So if you can't, this is my main concern, right? If the current government, the way they're going, they're going to hinder the police's ability to build relationships with the communities that actually can help us.
So when I listen to you talk, I think that you're basically saying we'd be better off putting this money into the hands of local police forces rather than into CSIS, for example, or any other kind of overarching organization, and say, have people on the ground who are interacting with the communities in which they are at work.
No,
am I hearing you correctly?
Actually, no, I'm saying no, absolutely. CSIS does need the same type of resources as well. I mean, how they operate, and I was very fortunate to be able to work with a lot of their members in different organizations. So I've got a good sense of how they operate, and they're very good at what they do. Very dedicated, and to get into being CSIS, it's very difficult. So no, they too need the same resources, and they too do the same level of work as well. So so my thing is, it's about giving the resources to the right agencies to do the work. My concern is when we put too much emphasis on trying to think that legislation is going to solve the problem. It helps the agencies, but it does not. It's not the be-all, end-all that's going to solve the problem. It's not politicians are not going to solve the problems. It's the people who are on the ground, the agencies, that are going to prevent and stop these attacks.
So I'm a little bit fascinated to, and hoping that you can give me an example without revealing confidences of saying, here's a subtle little change in the way something is described, or a nuance that maybe you had to hear a few times before you picked it up. What would be an example of something like that when you're talking to people in the community that all of a sudden you go, oh, something just changed, and that would tweak you, or pique your curiosity to say, now I need to find out more?
Yeah, so one could be where, say, a family member, friend, somebody within the community all of a sudden realizes somebody is just acting a little differently, has a little bit more political viewpoints, and all of a sudden just takes a trip and comes back, and their viewpoints are a little bit more stronger. That subtlety is something that would be very important to notice, to make sure that this person has not gone beyond, besides for having the right to have a political viewpoint, to actually start the radicalization process.
How do you find those people? Like, how do you know that they've gone on a trip all of a sudden? Don't you need sort of this combination of, the surveillance of them and their movements, plus the community work?
Well, the surveillance only works when you've identified somebody. And that, once we have that becomes easier. But the real difficulty is identifying the person in the first place that's actually going to do that.
The one that is a legitimate potential threat.
Absolutely. So those are the clues that we're always looking for to start us. You can have the best microscope in the world that can give you the best intelligence. If you don't know where to focus it, it's not going to be much use to you.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your career. How did you start to develop this skill set? Where did you first get started?
Fortunately for me, I was in the reserves first, and I did a lot of full-time work in the Army. And I deployed to Bosnia in 1997. And when I went there, it opened my eyes to how operations work. And one thing I realized was we were, as Canadians, we're always just helping people. And so when I was helping this community out of a Serb community in the mountains, and as I built rapport with them, and I was genuinely wanting to help them, through that process, all of a sudden they just started sharing information. And I wasn't in the intelligence world. I wasn't there to ask them for I wasn't asking for anything. I was genuinely there to help them. But they started providing information. So I started passing this information on. Turns out this information was very useful. So I realized that building genuine rapport is very important. So when it came to policing, you just have that same type of mentality as most police officers do, go up building rapport. And I was very fortunate that somebody noticed this skill set, which I didn't know I had, and they said, you know what, you'd be good at this. And they said, you should apply for Gang Squad. So I did. I got trained up a little bit further, and I was pulled into this world of police officers that do this type of work.
So you join the Gang Squad.
Yes.
How, when you start on the outside of this, do you start to move into the circles that allow you to open up conversation? I can understand when you're out on the beat, like you're there, you're expected to be there. People know that they're going to interact with you. But with somebody who's in a gang, they're doing everything they can to avoid you.
Actually, it's not the case usually. They're trying to avoid all their criminal activity, but themselves, they're not avoiding you. And there's many ways to actually do this. And I can't say that I just kind of came into this. I was mentored by some very good people, and the incoming chief of police was in Gang Squad, and the people that were in there, you get mentored by a lot of different people. So through the a year or two, you go through different partners, and they teach you their different skill set. And I learned so much. And the biggest thing I remember from a member who's now in homicide, the tenacity to dig. And to figure out and use your creativity to be able to find that lead and keep moving forward. And then when you get in that environment and you realize is that being that enforcement, that tough guy attitude, you need to show confidence, but it's the police officer that has the ability to communicate is the one that's really going to get the job done.
When you went to Afghanistan, you go as part of a fighting force at this point. So it's not the same as going to Bosnia where you're there to help. Or working in Gang Squad. Now you're in a fighting force. How then do you create those kinds of relationships in that sort of environment?
Funny you mention that. When I went to Afghanistan, I was hoping to kind of leave the really detailed digging that we do. It can be mentally draining. That I was going to go as a military officer, do my work. Here's the bad guys. Here's us, and we're going to do our job.
Yeah.
I quickly realized that it wasn't the case, and I had to apply my police detective training. And when I started doing that, I started getting a much different picture of what was happening. We took the fight to the Taliban, and we took it hard. In 2006, as General Vance, who's going to be the Chief of Defense Staff, if I could quote him, he said that I was the architect of Operation Medusa, one of the biggest operations since the Korean War that Canada has led. We took the fight hard to the Taliban. And it was a big operation. But what people forgot was that they only remember the fight and the tactical win that we had. But they forgot that, how did we get there? I actually was able to take the population that was supporting the Taliban, bring them onto our side. That's how I was able to get the intelligence. That's how I was able to devise the counter tactics against them and develop the operation that we were finally able to win on.
Because you were able to build that relationship.
Absolutely.
So we're talking about Muslim communities there.
Very hard. I always like to say where the Taliban started.
Yeah. And you were able to get them to open up
Yes.
to us. I know you wrote an op-ed where you say you're worried that Bill C-51 and the current attitude is driving a wedge between the Muslim community and the rest of the country.
Yes.
What's your biggest concern about that, and what can we do then to make it go the other way, to bridge that gap?
What I give you the example from Afghanistan. What it ended up doing was, how did I build that relationship? It was very simple. We started treating the villagers in the same manner we treated everybody else. So it turns out with respect. There was what we found was there was a discrepancy on how certain tribes and villages were being treated versus other ones, and that corruption, that underlying corruption that was there, was fueling the insurgency. So first thing what we did was, you can't just go in all of a sudden somebody's just going to trust you. One, diversity helped. I have to admit, me being a Sikh, even though we were the ones that actually fought in Afghanistan as part of the Sikh Empire, they still respected me as a warrior. So now getting back to, remember, the professionalism, they looked at me as that Sikh warrior, and all of a sudden I had to be that person that I only had read about as Sikh warriors and what they're like. And I remember this one elderly gentleman comes up to me, he goes, "You're a Sikh and I know you have to help me," because they realized the historical precedent.
So just that created an opportunity for engagement.
We just started treating people equally, treating them with the same respect. Once you have earned their respect, they know exactly what you're looking for. If you go out and just go out and treat people with the same respect and you earn their trust, that's when the conversation starts. When you have their trust, they will share something with you.
Okay.
And it starts with a little thing. And if I could share one small story to illustrate this. We were in this village to do a cordon search operation, and I was just there as an observer. There was this Afghan gentleman that accompanied us as part of this force, and I saw him taking this motorcycle and wheeling it away. And my interpreter that was with us, he goes, "Hey sir, he's stealing that motorcycle." Well, and so I just trusted him, so I just radioed down the line. I said, "Listen, guys, there's a guy coming down with a motorcycle, the Afghan gentleman. Can you ask him to come back over here?" So he came back, and I said, "Where'd you get this motorcycle?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm confiscating this. It was used in an ambush 2 days ago." I said, "Really?" I looked at the motorcycle, being a detective, and I said, "It had plastic wrapping on it. If the thing was started, the plastic would have melted on it, right?" So I said, "No." I said, "You took that from them." And my concern was, here we are. I don't want. He steals a motorcycle. They're going to think that we allowed this to happen.
Right.
So I told him, I said, "No, give it back." So I went to the compound, and the gentleman goes, I saw this very old Afghan gentleman there. I was so upset because he was like great-grandfather age type of thing. And I said, "Apologize to him." Surprisingly, he apologized. And then, anyways, left. And the elderly gentleman asked us to come over. He grabs my hand, starts kissing it, tears in his eyes. And through the interpreter, he goes, "You're the first one that ever stood up to him." Turns out he was a district governor. Afghan soldiers that were with us saw us do a genuine thing. All of a sudden, rapport started to build. So just because we were doing the right thing, we started to earn their trust. And through that trust, we ended up connecting with the real Afghans who originally gave the support to the Taliban for them to build this massive base. We brought them genuinely back to our side, and then we were able to launch Operation Medusa with their support and save Kandahar city from literally from being taken over in 2006.
Oh my gosh. And it started with an act of kindness.
That's what it starts with. If you want to build genuine rapport, you have to be that professional.
Bill Clinton, when he was here in 2001, I was mesmerized by watching him in the speech when he said, "What we need to do is put aside our insignificant differences and embrace our common humanity." And it sounds to me like you are saying pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. And again, I can't stress this enough. What Canada is, how it's perceived around the world, and I've got to been to some interesting places. Canada is judged on how Canada treats its immigrants, and the positive treatment has an impact. And I'll share another story with you from Afghanistan that illustrates this. And when Afghan soldiers, anybody that would see me would think I would be from the Indian Army, even though I'm wearing a Canadian uniform.
Yeah.
And this one Afghan soldier comes up to me, actually just before the start of Operation Medusa, we're about to launch the attack, comes up and goes, "Oh, you're from the Indian Army?" I said, "No, I'm not." Because I was actually working with the Americans at that time, so it was a very odd situation. And he goes, What, they actually let you join their military?" And I said, yeah, they let you join the military. And he goes, what rank are you? I said, I was a major at the time. And he goes, what, they let you be an officer? And I said, yes. And I said, I work for the top general too, right? And he goes, you know what? He goes, if Canada lets you join the military and lets you be an officer, and he goes, well, then maybe Canada is here to help us. What he's basically looking at is, here's a person, he knows that I'm not originally from Canada, but he's looking at how Canada is treating us. And that positive vibe that he's getting as Canada, it gets translated to all the soldiers. And I can assure you that myself and the soldiers that I work with some of us would not have been alive to come back home if it wasn't for their help. Because we were working in some very nasty areas. We would get a phone call through an interpreter, or a runner would come and tell us, there's an ambush set up for you, or somebody's going to attack you from over here. There's a suicide bomber is going to hit you. Because of that rapport, not only just like you, once they trust you, they take ownership, the security, they actually take responsibility for you and your security.
Wow.
You have that, and that's what diversity does, right?
It sounds to me like your bigger concern about Bill C-51 is part of a trend that maybe you see happening that is cutting or starting to break up the inclusive nature of Canada as a whole. Because if we start signaling out specific groups of people saying, we don't trust you, then the nature of what this country has become then changes.
Yes. And here's another thing. It's not even just the bill that I'm concerned about. When a government, which is the leadership of a nation, takes a certain stand that creates division within communities, then other organizations, other people who might have certain viewpoints, all of a sudden says that it's okay for me to take down this approach. I'm not doing it because I'm being racist. I'm just having my viewpoint now. And that leadership role that a government takes does filter down into different ways. So my thing is, as a government, you should always be bringing the people together and not dividing them.
I agree with you. A number of years ago, just down the road from where we are right now, when Jean Chrétien was still Prime Minister, he was at the dedication for the China Gate on Pender Street. And he said something that moved me so much, and whenever I share it with somebody who's new to this country, he said, you know, we have opened our arms to the people of the world and said, come and join us in the building of a truly blessed nation.
That's right.
And I think we are blessed.
We are.
And like you, I hope that we stay this way and that we make those kinds of decisions that allow us to be those kinds of people.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
No,
Appreciate you coming in and having this discussion.
No, thank you for having me.
My pleasure.